Welcome to this week's deep dive. This week we have Jamie Mair, the legend in his own mind. We could list all his titles and all the recognition, but I think Jamie just wants to kind of be, it's Jamie.
I'm
So
just
welcome,
Jamie.
Jamie.
Thank you very much, Kate.
And so we're really excited to have you on this week because this week we kind of got a little bit rowdy on Promo Chat. I say that because I'm a legend in my own mind as well. And, and so we were kind of talking about the things that kind of go unsaid in this industry where everyone's like, yeah, it's we got to talk about it, but nobody does. And so we started with, what's one thing about the promo industry that everyone knows but no one talks about? Why are these topics persona non grata? And you responded with, too much brand fill being made that is irresponsible and not sustainable. This is a favorite topic of mine because it's, we have to have products with purpose. And a lot of times we're chasing the cheapest item and not looking at everything else. So for you, like, what do you kind of notice? Do you notice a trend and change? Are you just like, this has to stop? What's your one thing that you want to like lay out there of no one talks about this and we need to?
Yeah. I think the whole concept around brand fill is that, you see at retail, like fast fashion as an example, like there's been kind of a revolt against fast fashion and, people's understanding of the implications, not only in the supply chain and environmentally, but just, the people who are making these products. And I think our industry is lagging and has lagged in many areas. We kind of turn a blind eye because we're always happy to get a great order. We're always happy to get a big order, but we're not always kind of versed or helping our clients understand the implications of what it is they're asking us to have made. And so that's where I kind of wish we would stop for a second and just say, what's the outcome? Like, what is the expectation of this and where will it end up? And I think we need to be more responsible around that. And so that's where the notion of brand fill came up. And it was kind of a simple question, like, is this brand fill or is this actually purposeful and is it going to get used? And if it's brand fill, then we really don't want to do it.
Yeah, because I would say that my biggest complaint right now, what people are talking about, is that there's a lot of suppliers out there going, we have eco products, without recognizing everything around the eco. Like, I remember this one story where they're like, oh, it was like this amazing, like, eco-friendly tumbler, blah, blah, and it all came in a plastic bag and an unrecyclable box. And so there was it was to have the eco product without the thought behind of what that eco product actually is. And
Right.
and it's true. Unless it means something, don't do it, because it's not going to get used. And then the other thing is, like, you take away, like, you're getting a lot of and I hear from a lot of distributors about this, is there's a ton of push from end users going, well, we don't want to be wasteful. So what would be your suggestion to people to kind of counteract that? Okay, well, it's not wasteful if we do.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point about the eco product, because there's so many things, right, where the marketing of it makes sense, but then in practicality, like how it's actually being produced and how it's being delivered defeat the purpose of the eco-friendliness of it. And I think the subject is so complex, right? Because it goes back to how do you define sustainability, right? If sustainability is defined as simply as, is this a sustainable behavior? Is this a sustainable process? It's not just, is it ecologically friendly? Is it good for people? Is it good for the people who make these things? And so I think the broadening the definition of sustainability is really, really important, first and foremost. And then I think, just from how we advise clients, and clients, they'll make a mandate and they'll say, yes, as a brand, we want to be more responsible. We want to have, less ancillary packaging, and we want to be perceived as leaders in, this space or what have you. And a lot of it's lip service. And I think for us to be in a position of being educated and being able to consult and advise in a very professional manner to clients, in helping them get 100% there, not just, faking their way there, but getting all the way there, I think is vital, because nothing will change, because this is really, really hard, right? Like, you're talking about all of these processes that have probably been in place for a long, long time, people doing these jobs, people making these things, whether it's just something as kind of simple as a plastic bag that goes around, like you got to change, that's change management now, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's almost like, we have this committee for promo standards, that's figuring out how to make the most efficient process to share information around orders. We almost need to have the same type of committee and approach to sustainability and packaging and reducing quote unquote brand fill. Because I think unless we really commit to it and we can get away with it, because it's kind of the path of least resistance, we would all prefer to just kind of get away with it, because that's easy. But
Yeah.
it doesn't make anyone feel good. We know it doesn't feel good because it's going to come home to roost at some point.
I would argue that it's come home now. Like if you look at the dialogue, the ones that have become like the articles that have come out, so the Fast Company, like there's so
Yeah.
many articles and mentions out there of like how wasteful swag is.
Yeah.
And so like it's there, like people see it and they see, I remember this article and it was talking about the latest like election. So I think it's called the JJ dinner or the Truth and Freedom dinner. It happens in Iowa, and it was this big thing. And it was right after Beto had just he just stepped down. And the article mentioned like twice how the garbage bins around the arena were filled with Beto swag, like or Beto, sorry,
Yep.
we're just filled with his merchandise just thrown away. And that's going to happen with a lot of the other campaigns that are going on, is like everything that just gets tossed. And so already there's a mindset out there of people seeing branded things as junk instead of seeing them as marketing, as like a sort of promotional material and truly being a promotional item, and not just kind of like we put your logo on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing too, right? Like if we recognize that this is advertising for the most part, if you think about a bad, a bad TV spot or a bad radio spot or a bad social media spot, like what are the real kind of physical implications of that? Like there's not that much waste. Maybe some, mental horsepower was wasted, but no one's running to the recycling bin with a bad TV spot. And so I think, if you look at like some of the companies, like, the Grossmans, right? They started a company called Swag Cycle. I don't know if you've seen that, where
Mm.
it's a new model, and Ben Grossman's leading it. And they are in the process of developing a company that will essentially collect unwanted merchandise and they'll dispose of it in a responsible manner. And I don't know enough about the model, but I think it's intriguing. And then of course you've got, Denise and Sarah in Vancouver and Fairwear, and they've built their whole business model around being sustainable and being responsible and being advocates and advisors. And so I think we need more people like that.
Yeah.
And I think we're not going to be able to hide from it. I mean, like you mentioned, the Fast Company article, was it Liz Segrin, I think may
Yeah.
have been her name. I mean, she torched us,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. And I think if we just pretend like, oh, we'll get through that news cycle and just go back to what we're doing,
Yeah.
it's really not going to end up well. I remember in 2008, 2009, when the economy really turned and everyone stopped buying because the economy was so bad, everyone was being laid off. And we had, we had a partnership with a great company in London, and I flew to London and I said to those guys, what happens if clients realize when the economy turns around, they don't need what we do because they just stop buying it now? What happens if they actually realize they don't need it? There's nothing purposeful. There's nothing measurable. What happens then? And I still have that question in my mind. We went back to our old behavior and just, the industry kept growing and growing, but nothing changed. And so I feel like with younger generation, people coming in and issues around, climate change and everything, like we've got to get serious about this. As serious about pushing orders efficiently, we got to get serious about, are we making stuff that matters?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true. And as you mentioned before, like sustainable means sustainable behavior. Like, can we
Yeah.
make these changes and stick to them and not, and stop, honestly, stop treating eco products as a trend and a fad that will go away, like fidget spinners, like, because it's not that, like,
Right.
it's here, it's go, and my god, yeah, like, what happens when people are like, no, it's a wasteful item, like, no, I don't see purpose in it. Or like, I mean, you can see the changes already in fast fashion, like sort of the blowback against H&M and Forever 21,
Right.
and it's just going to continue that way. And yeah, and
Yeah. So I'm thinking about championing this no brand fill thing.
go for it. Well, it's one of those, like, I push this with my awards, is like, you're going to spend a little bit more on it because it's something that is going to be there forever. Like,
Yep.
like, it's of meaning to the person, that it's not going to be like, oh, this is a cool scarf. Yeah, no, it's not my style anymore, and it gets tossed the next year. Like, buy something that is, buy and design things that are meaningful to people. Like, I always think of the best way to kind of figure out good promos. So like, to sit at the airport and watch what people are actually using. Like, what's the brand that, or what's the product that's lasted to someone's like routine. And it's the same way. It's like, people aren't going to be wearing that cheap t-shirt that has, a bad logo on it. They're going to be wearing the really cool, like, I think, like, a few brands are coming out with t-shirts with meaning as well.
Yeah.
Because like, they're wanting to put their emotion and their money and their time behind brands and products that have meaning and purpose. And if we're just looking at it as like a quick hit on a logo, then
Right.
it has no purpose, has no meaning on it.
Right. And I think a lot of it just comes down to, you can ask a simple question like, who cares?
Yep.
And if the answer is like, yeah, I don't care about that, then like maybe consider doing something different. Like, if you're so compelled to have to do something that matters. And like, before we jumped on, we were talking about the merchandise that Common Skew does for their events, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I hand it to that team and Mark Graham, because they're so creative and they work so closely with their partners who manufacture, and you're one of them, and you guys make beautiful things that people don't want to leave behind. And to me, that's a great mark of a product that people care about. It resonates with them personally because they've made the effort to attend these events. They feel like they're part of the community. These products are representations of that experience and the emotion that comes with it and the friendships that they're building. And then it just so happens it's cool. Like, they're cool stuff. And if you could bottle that recipe up and say, these are the criteria that make for great merchandise that is, compelling and it's responsible and sustainable and all those things, and you followed that playbook, then we'd all be better off. Because
Yeah.
the vast majority of this industry will fetch, and they will be told, go fetch me this, and they're excited and they'll go fetch without asking, why am I fetching this for you? What are you trying to accomplish? Because I think a lot of that comes with courage too. You have to be not only courageous enough to stop and ask, but you also have to be educated enough to ask why, and then have a good answer. So I don't know. I mean, I've been in this industry my entire career, and I find it fascinating because it mirrors so many other industries, like advertising, big advertising. It mimics fashion. It mimics, retail. And so, but there's a lot of dynamics that go into this that make this business complicated, but I think we could simplify it.
Yeah. And again, it's like, I want to see that push away from, oh, I need 1,000 pieces for $1. Like,
Right.
change it to 50 pieces for $5, or like,
Right.
change your method on what you're selling so that you don't be, because it's a branding thing for you as well. It's like, you've just
Right.
become a fetcher. Go fetch me this item for really cheap. Okay, instead of
If,
like an advisor of like, what do you think we could get the best ROI for?
right.
Yeah.
If you, I'm just going to apologize now. If you hear some noise in the background, it's the Clydesdale Weimaraner that is running around. So that's what's happening. Sorry.
We're used to dogs being in the background here, so don't worry.
Okay.
But
All
yeah,
right.
well, so Jamie, this is a fantastic conversation. Do you think we've fixed the industry yet?
No, we don't have. We've got so far to
The
go, but
podcast
I
didn't fix
think,
it?
yeah. But well, hey, I think it's such an important topic. Like, if you could see this topic coming up, like in education, more often in some of the industry events, more conversations, having experts like, Denise Tasharu come and speak to larger audiences. But I do think we have to approach it from a systemic standpoint, right? Like we have to approach it from a process-oriented change management platform of what can we do to do this better? And I think there's a gentleman out in Seattle, I think his name's Jeff Becker. You know Jeff? He's a CEO of, I think
Yeah.
it's Kotis, Kotis Design, super smart guy, thinker. And he's very passionate and serious about this subject too. And so I think maybe it's just you get a group of people together to create a ruckus and
Yeah.
stir the pot, and I think it's going to be better off for everybody. And then we can just reduce our no brand fill.
Exactly. And because the change has to, like I said, this isn't a fad. This isn't going away. This is
You're absolutely right.
We have to now think about this. And I think suppliers and distributors have to stop waiting for the end users to push it on us to be like, well, we should have an eco one. It's like, we have to start pushing it out, being like, you need to do this for your promo. You need to think this way for your event. And because otherwise we're going to be left behind because we're not reflecting what people want essentially, or what people need.
That point you just made is so great, because I think the tendency is to have the end user apply their standards upon us, and then we change based upon them. And I think that's difficult, obviously, because every end user has their own standards. But I think you're right. Like, we've gotten used to sitting back waiting to be told how to go do something. I think we now need to innovate and take more of a leadership position as an industry and say, these are our standards. Like, this is what we're doing. And then we can go apply that across, the end user base, and do that from a position of authority and, professionalism. So I think your point there is so important and powerful, that we've always kind of just waited to be told what to do. And we're good at that, but it's got to change.
Yeah. Well, it's just the straws. So reusable straws was ASI's #1 product this year. And that's reflected in searches, in orders, in sort of the rise in products selection. That, like, last year, like, their numbers were crazy because it didn't even register. Like, it was just low enough that you're like, oh, it's a product offering. And then the next year was huge. And a lot of that came from one viral video of a turtle, like, from the effect of what our waste is. So it's like, okay, well, what is the next thing going to be? Like, what else are we going to lose, or is it going to become the next big thing?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Lots to think about and to cover on this one. Well,
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation and joining us on Promo Chat.
My pleasure.
So where can we find you on the internet?
Well, I'm mainly, like, starting to get my Twitter game going. So I'm at Jamie Mair, which is JAMIEMAIR. That's where I am on Twitter. Perfect. At Jamie Mair. That's simple.
We'll find you.
Just Jamie. Yeah.
You're a fun follow. Everyone should go see him.
Right. I'm trying to curtail my swearing on Twitter.
Why start now?
I know. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our sponsor, Maple Ridge Farms, for being a part of our Promo Chat. And remember, everyone, every Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern and noon Pacific, and just follow the hashtag. Thank you.